Howdy, folks. Happy Friday. Thank God it's Friday, and it's the last Friday of 2023. We're not going to do any New Year's resolutions or any of that kind of stuff. It just, when it gets to this point of the year, I'm just like, let's get past New Year's and get back to the normal. I mean, I like I said, I refer to the Wednesday before Thanksgiving and the day after Christmas. I used to be the day after New Year's, but there's like hockey and everything else is going on. So really there's no interruption. It's just like the ball drop and all that BS. And actually, Russ, I can't remember who it was. Oh, it was Zig Fracassi.
Right.
Who would and he was messaging something on X with Ian, our editor from Full Press, about being in Times Square for the ball drop. And honestly, there is no place I would want less to be.
No. There's a way to do it, Mike. I'll mention this one more time for people that still want to do it. The way to do it is you go and you get a package from one of the places that are on Broadway, like Olive Garden. Go in there, you spend about $150 a person, you get your dinner, you get maybe one free drink, something like that. You wait until 11:45. Then all of a sudden they open up a door and it's to a part of the patio that's actually within the crowd, but not in the crowd because you're cordoned off from everybody because they, have a metal railing and stuff. And you could watch everything and just kind of be chill. The only people next to you are the people in the restaurant. So really nice that way. That was the way to do it. I did that in 2000.
If you could arrange that would be fine. But if you're out there with all,
I would do it the other way now.
Yeah, if you're out there with all the smelly masses and you're just bumping elbows and people are puking.
No, I'm not going to wear Pampers and pee in it, and I'm not doing any of that. But anyhow, let's talk about something more dignified.
Yes.
And this is going to anger people, and predictably, I know how Mike's going to act, but that's okay. There is a new movie coming out, and it's called Godzilla X Kong: The New Empire. And so the big thing in this movie is Mothra is in this movie. Now, Mothra versus Godzilla kind of goes back to, it's almost like Ali Frazier. It goes back to 1964. So in 1964, Mothra and some other stooge who's not around anymore, they flew Godzilla over the ocean. Godzilla killed that other thing with the atomic breath, but they dumped Godzilla in the ocean. So Mothra won that battle. Then Mothra died in another movie against Godzilla. So this could be the last one, the Thriller in Manila. And I really do think Mothra is going to win this one because Mothra's tired of Godzilla. We're all tired of Godzilla. He's basically a piece of crap.
It's the Thriller in Godzilla.
Yeah, there you go.
No, no, you know who's going to win? Megalon is going to win.
Megalon was in the last one. Megalon was great for 10 minutes and got buried again.
Yeah, no.
I'm telling you, Godzilla is going to finally go down. Mothra is finally going to be the champ.
They'll never kill Godzilla. Come on.
They did. They drunk in 1964. They dumped Godzilla in the ocean.
I mean, in modern times, they'll never kill. Godzilla is as immortal as John Wick. They need more sequels, so they'll never kill.
Mothra is not the worst part. We're going to block you. Shut up. You don't even know. Listen, you know what they don't even do with Godzilla anymore? The Little Women. I was sick of them too. I don't want to see them anymore.
So
you remember the 3 women that would chant for him?
No, I don't.
Yeah.
So is Kong in this movie?
Yes, Kong is always, listen, I like King Kong, and Kong will always be a worthy adversary, but Kong's kind of a dope. Kong is like the Gronk of that kingdom.
So Kong is doing USAA commercials?
No, I don't know if Kong could drive, but if he could, it would be scary. But
Kong probably plays pickleball better than Gronk does.
Oh yeah, I would think so. Yeah, so I'm trying to think. What are these 3 women's names? Okay,
I don't know this stuff. I know King Kong. And King Kong has got good taste in women. Naomi Watts, Jessica Lange. Okay, there you go.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you one story. Here's my last story about the first Godzilla one that was kind of like after the really lousy models, but before it got great like now, and that was the Jessica Lange one.
Yeah.
And so there was a thing with Newsday. There was a contest, right? if you signed up like 10 new people, you got to see the movie. So me and my buddy are like, hey, look, why don't we just fake sign up like 5 people each, and we'll cancel it after a week, and it's still cheaper than the movie, and we'll get to go to this special screening.
Right.
So we did, and it was awesome. It was great. And that
were any of the stars there? Was like Charles Grodin there?
This is like in North Massapequa. And luckily, we just had the movie theater to ourselves. You know, it was just like the Newsday carriers, which was cool. And it was great. And so that was a lot of fun. And, you know, that's as close as I got to like a big Godzilla premiere.
Okay, Jan, break the tie. Are you pro Godzilla or pro Mothra, or do you not care?
Don't give a flying fig. Not my jam. Sorry, never has been, never will be. Sorry.
Whatever.
I'm being brutally honest with you. It's just not my thing.
That's okay. It's fine. I'm kidding.
Okay, let's start the show. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Friday, December 29th, 2023.
Hi, I'm Jan Levine, and the World Juniors has been better than watching the NHL today.
Russ Cohen from NHLDraftBuzz.com, writing about the World Juniors. Thank you.
It's been fun. It's been a lot of fun. That Czechia US game was a phenomenal game to watch.
We're going to talk about it on the other side.
And I'm Michael Agello, and I predict that Eck will get the year wrong on the first show next week. And this is the Hockey Buzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. All right, we'll start with the World Junior because Jan mentioned it, and I watched. I caught the last part of the third period, which was dominated by the U.S. It was 3-3 at that point. Went to overtime. The U.S. had a power play. I thought they overhandled the puck on the power play. They really. I mean, they kept. Was it Leonard, McGroarty, Gauthier, and Lane Hudson out there for the full 2 minutes. I think they almost got caught at the end of the power play. Czechia almost won it in overtime.
Yeah, and it's a 4-on-3. They don't really practice it that much, Mike. I mean, I was at practice. They didn't practice that at all, right? They were just scrimmaging and doing some stick drills. So they don't practice it much.
Then they went to
shouldn't you? I mean, Russ, if you think about it, shouldn't you? I mean,
you don't have time,
that should be something at least devote some time to.
You don't have time. You really don't, because when you go to these camps, you're trying to figure out who's in camp, and so you want the best against the best, and you want to make your lineups a couple different things. They do practice the shootout, but to practice a 4-on-3, that's a little much.
Yeah, so then it went to the shootout, and Yuri Kulich, the Sabre prospect, scored on a nice shot, beating Jacob Fowler, and then on the last opportunity, and I'm five shots. That's international rules, but I'm so used to 3 shots in the NHL. But on the 5th shot, Perreault, Gabe Perreault scored. The Rangers draft pick scored, beat Harabel, the UMass Amherst goaltender, and then Isaac Howard scores. I think he's Tampa Bay draft pick, right, Ross?
Yeah,
Isaac Howard. He scored for U.S. Then they won 4-3 in the shootout. I believe Slovakia is still leading that group, but they have undefeated. But they haven't played the U.S. yet, and that'll be for first place in that group. So, from what I saw of it, very entertaining game. I mean, I'm really struck by how talented the U.S. are up front. But Russ, you said even back to the U.S. camp that their defense was something that was going to maybe come back to bite them.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't have any sort of like Chesley's a rock solid defenseman. They have maybe 2 or 3 guys who really play defense, and Hudson plays a good game of keep away and actually mostly a safe defense. So with puck retrieval, so I don't really count him in the group. But they don't have anybody really physical. They don't have anybody really to clear the net. You saw that play by Sam Rinzel. He's like a big, lanky offensive defenseman, but he gave Fowler no chance on that second goal. You had someone behind the net. You let him get in front of the net. You don't even try and clear him. You just kind of sway your stick at it. It's not going to cut it. They're going to have the same problems against Slovakia, and there's nothing they can do because they just don't have any bigger guys. So it's really going to take like that full team effort. Their whole thing is David Carl is like, listen, we're going to keep everything inside the dots. And if you saw, the Czechs did the opposite. They went outside the dots. And when they went outside the dots, you've got guys like Kulich and whatever that have some size and speed that could get back in there and did cause problems. The thing about Fowler is, and I like telling this story because last year he wasn't drafted in the first round because people were saying that he was fat. He was out of shape. And even in camp this year, he had to sort of prove his fitness by saying what weight he was at. I don't think he should have to do that anymore, but he said it just to kind of, shut up the naysayers, I think. Mm-hmm. He's a really good kid. I got a call from him. This is how good of a guy he is. I tried to interview him about a week before the draft, and I didn't get a chance. He didn't call me back. He had won a championship in the USHL, and so it never happened, right? All of a sudden, I'm at the draft, and it's about maybe an hour before day 2, and he calls me, and he goes, can I still interview with it? Is it too late? And I said, no. And I ran over to the side. I wrote on, I don't even know what I wrote on a napkin. I don't know what I wrote quotes on. And I made sure I got the article up, and I knew with day 2, obviously he was going to get drafted. And I was like, this guy is a first-round talent. I think he's a number 1 goalie talent in, future in the NHL. Mm-hmm. And Montreal got a hell of a pick. And I give him a lot of credit because he just was like a lot of us when we were 17, 18. He didn't understand nutrition. Now he does. Now look at the difference. And he was great. And he really killed Kulik. Like, being a little smart on that play and aggressive is something that he's really good at. And he changed Kulik's second shot. That was big.
Yeah, and he made a couple really sprawling saves with the left pad that were impressive. Now,
we'll see what James wants to say about it.
Go ahead, Jim. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, no question. Coming into the game, I think most of us thought that Augustine was probably going to get the nod since Fowler started yesterday, and Augustine was sick, and Fowler was great. I mean, you talked about going wide, right? I think Fortescue got burned once with it going wide because of the fact he kind of stumbled and lost his footing, which led to the 2-on-1 and the trailer goal. So it was one instance of it. I mean, I thought the U.S. got a little lackadaisical, but I thought they also carried play most of the third. Rabel did a great job for Czechia in net, stoning a lot of the opportunities. And the goal, as you mentioned, was Chesney. Chesney, stepping into the high slot, and a great feed by Hudson, and him taking his time and picking a spot and hitting it. So, I mean, in terms of the competition, as you said, Czechia, they said is much more of a greasy game today. I think Slovakia is going to be kind of similar, a bit more physical in terms of the style of play that they have, which I think the U.S. can play that style, but they also want to utilize their speed more than anything else. But what I was impressed for the most part is they showed enough patience where they weren't trying to leak out all the time and leaving their defense, basically the 2-on-1 and 3-on-1s. It happened once when Fortescue was beat, but other than that, not a lot of 2-on-1 and 3-on-2 opportunities. Did a much better job in terms of preventing breakouts. I mean, the one goal was a bad turnover at the opposite blue line, which then led to that 2-on-1, but they limited those for the most part during the game.
Well, one thing going towards, the medal round, when they crisscross, when the group that the U.S. are in, they will play, it'll be 1 versus 4, 2 versus 3, etc. Sweden and Canada better watch out, because in this tournament, a hot goaltender can beat you, and Hrabal for Czechia and Gajen for Slovakia. And Slovakia is
really solid,
both really good. They could get hot, and those teams are not pushovers. They could beat a Sweden or beat a Canada based on that. So, I mean, that's something to look forward to or just to watch out for as the tournament.
I'm going to tell you something that was funny too, Mike. Something that I'd never seen TSN do before, but it's a big nod to the U.S. I'd never heard James Duthie try and figure out a path where Canada didn't have to play the U.S. until potentially the gold game. Like saying, well, if they do this, this, and this, they won't have to see the U.S. until possibly the gold medal game, where that never used to be the thing. It used to be the opposite way around. Like, they would talk about who they're going to beat and when they're going to beat them. Not as confident this year for obvious reasons. And Sweden is really, really good.
Also, that would be the big rating get for TSN if it was Canada versus U.S. in the gold medal. But, I mean, I think the Canadian perspective has been pretty level-headed in this sense. Yeah, they are not pumping up this team as a team that's the big favorite. I mean, it's in Sweden now. The Swedes have always been great in the preliminary round. I mean, they're undefeated right now. They're if they beat Canada, and they're up 2-0 against Canada right now. If they go 4-0 or whatever I think it's 3-0 in the opening round. that means they'll play the 4th place team in the other division. That doesn't mean it's a pushover. Doesn't mean that they're going to go all the way to the gold medal game and win. So, things can happen.
They have home ice advantage, and you can see Otto Stenberg plays great there. He plays for Frölunda there. But this ice, there's a lot of talk about the ice because apparently
the ice in the U.S. game
honestly.
was terrible.
It's not so much that it's terrible, too. Beside that, because I agree, it didn't look great. It is not full SHL or Olympic, I should say. It's not full Olympic-sized ice. We thought it was because it's Frölunda, but it turns out they've kind of like modified it a little bit.
It's a hybrid.
It's really a hybrid. It is still really wide on the edges, but then it's like the NHL down the middle. So it's not true Olympic ice that they're playing on.
I think Olympic is 200 by 100?
I think it is.
And the NHL is 200 by 85.
Right.
Yeah, and this is like somewhere in between.
This is like 200 by 90 or something like that.
What is funny though, like Barticus was mentioned how they sang "Hey Baby" the crowd for like 15 minutes. It did annoy all of us, no question. Even my wife has asked me, why do they keep playing, Tubular Bells from The Exorcist? I'm like, I don't know. It's another country. Somebody else.
Jan, I'll tell you, at 2018 at the World Junior in Buffalo, when "Hey Baby, Would You Be My Girl" was the Canadian goal song, I got to the point where I had to wear, those little yellow things in your ears when you're like an airplane, bringing out the
traffic
airplane
controller.
Yeah, because the
guys who are on the tarmac. Yeah.
It was getting that bad because the Canadians were scoring. That song as a goal song is on par with Hall & Oates. It's that bad.
Oh no, it's on par.
It's absolutely horrific. And of course, the Canadians love it because it sort of gets under the skin. Yeah, it gets under the skin because it's friggin' annoying. That's why. But
one of our friends from Edmonton, I want to tell this to Jan, and then we could all comment. He was showing some of the snack stands that they had there and in Gothenburg. And what's interesting is they just pile up stuff. So it's like they had like a pyramid of like pork rinds and a pyramid of like popcorn. But me, I don't want to get the bottom popcorn one or one in the middle where somebody else's bottom is touching. I don't want that. I don't want that in my popcorn. So like that's the difference, I think, between people in the U.S. I would not eat any of that as a result. I wouldn't eat pork rinds anyhow, but
I wouldn't eat popcorn because I worked at a movie theater. I'm sick of the smell of popcorn, the taste of popcorn. No, thank you. All right.
I understand. I'll give you dispensation on that.
Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, let's talk a little bit about one of the events in the game one of the games last night, which was Carolina and Montreal. And it went viral on X after the hit by Stefan Noesen of the Hurricanes on Juraj Slafkovsky, the 2022 number 1 overall pick. And from my recollection, I think this is the second big hit he's taken this year.
Yeah, I think you're right.
He took 3 or 4 last year, and I'm pretty sure. I know that he got injured. I don't know if the injury was on one of the hits, but he was concussed a couple times last year. And we were saying, Russ, it's like he's a big guy who played in the Slovakian league, and then he played in the Olympics, and then he played at the World Junior. And except for the World Junior, he really wasn't exposed to guys opening up the Bombay doors on him. And in the NHL, he is, and he's a big kid, and he doesn't have that radar to avoid that kind of physicality. And he's got his clock cleaned last night. Now he's at practice today, but my point here is he's a big body and he can't avoid contact. And I was messaging with somebody last night. He says, this is Lindros syndrome. Nobody hit Lindros in junior. Nobody hit him in the first few years of the NHL. And then people started doing it, and he couldn't avoid the hits. And he's going to get hurt the way it's going. Right?
Yeah, I don't get it, but he definitely went out of his way to do it. And I felt like really dirty as a result. It is kind of weird. I don't know if he is getting this because he's just big, or does he do any kind of like trash talking or stuff on the ice? I don't know.
I don't think so.
But I don't think so either. But guys are going after him, and I do feel bad. I do.
Dan, I mean,
So my view on this is I thought the hit was actually high. I mean, I thought the hit was kind of dirty. I thought it was high. I thought he came up and hit him. Now, Grant, you want to argue he didn't protect himself? I'll grant you that. But irrespective of that, that hit was a dirty hit. That hit is one that, in my opinion, potentially is a suspendable offense based upon where the point of contact was and where he came to hit him. Wasn't playing the puck at all, wasn't attempting to play the puck, and he hit him high in the head with that primary point of contact. To me, that's a predatory hit to a certain extent, and that's worthy of not necessarily a phone call at least. I mean, again, the Department of Player Safety is an oxymoronic statement anyway, as we all know, but at least it should have been something that should have been reviewable, because irrespective of he's practicing today, and it's great that he seemingly didn't get hurt. It's the same thing with Trouba with the hit by Wilson, was kind of a drive-by. This one really was definitely one where he aimed and he hit him high. In my opinion, that was what should have been called.
Yeah, and I just checked. Noisen is 6'1", 205, and Slavkovsky is 6'3", 230. So you could say, well, he was going up to hit. Yeah, but you're not going. If you're hitting him chest, if you're hitting him shoulder to chest, then you're not having to jump up. But by jumping up, and it looked like he jumped up on that hit, he's going for the head or he's going for the chin. And yeah, that's a predatory hit. But I don't even think he was penalized.
No, I don't think
so either.
The only guy who went sort of after him was Cole Caulfield, and Cole Caulfield's 5'9" and 170 pounds. He's not going to do anything to Stefan Noisen, and he's probably the Canadians don't want him to. But nobody called him on the carpet for doing that, and that's why a guy like Arbor Jacki is supposed to be on the team to sort of police that stuff.
But again, Mike, we talk about this. It's nice to have a player that's supposed to be policing things on a team, and we still see that these things are going to happen. I mean, even with Jacob Trouba on the Rangers, who's probably the biggest intimidator now next to Tom Wilson until he got hit by Tom Wilson, guess what? Rangers still get hit. They still have dirty hits. They still do it. There's never enough of a deterrent in my eyes.
And the fun part is the guys who I'm somewhat on Twitter is a Twitter Rangers group, and honestly, they're unhinged in my opinion at times. They're like, well, this hit never would have happened with Ryan Reeves there. I'm like, are you effing kidding me? Like, pay attention. Okay, a couple things. First of all, what happened with Panarin was a one-off. The Rangers knew they had to get tougher. The firing of JD and Gordon, I mean, if that was the reason why, it was ridiculous, because I think both of them knew that they had to get tougher. So that's just Dolan wanting to rearrange the deck chairs to a certain extent. B, Reeves being there, if he's not on the ice, that doesn't help. And even if he is, he's sure as heck not really a deterrent, because there are other things that happen. So the concept of deterrent doesn't really happen anymore. And the problem is look, the instigator penalty has taken away the ability to players to police themselves on the ice to a certain extent, but also the referees and especially the league has done a bad job of handing down the proper suspensions associated with this to clean up the garbage and make sure this doesn't continually happen. If they actually handled it correctly and there was a protocol and there was consistency and they gave out suspensions and they say, look, you do it once, this is what you're getting. You do it a second times, it's magnified. You want to do it based upon the length of time of players out as well? Great. But until you do that, this will never stop.
Chris Drury, call Brad Treliving right now. He'll give you a great deal on Ryan Reeves right this second. Also,
you can keep him like all good 3 years. You're stuck with him.
Yeah, no, he'll just be buried next year or bought out. And the buyout, I guess, is something like less than $400,000, so it's inconsequential. But here, this is the thing about your point about the instigator. I mean, we saw what happened before the Christmas break with the Sabres and the Rangers. Will Cooley hits Ryan Johnson behind the net. Clean check. It wasn't predatory. I actually think it was face to face. I don't think it was from numbers, from behind. Eric Johnson, the veteran, sticks up for the young defenseman, gets into a fight with Cooley. He gets the instigator, and then and with the instigator, you get a 10-minute misconduct, and then jumped out of the penalty box and mouthed off to the official, and that's why he got the game misconduct. Nobody seems to know why Jeff Skinner got a misconduct on that one. Probably he said something.
He probably had to say something to the official.
Yeah.
Right. I'm assuming he used the Major League Baseball term in terms of what gets you thrown out, but
yeah.
I'll tell you what I noticed, and I noticed this covering one of the Flyers games that same week. There had to be a memo that went out by the NHL saying start using the instigator. Because all of a sudden there were like 2 or 3 instigators called in a week or within a 2-week period, and we never saw it called. for like a long, long time. But now all of a sudden it's getting called.
Okay, so Jan, you mentioned Larry Brooks's column about Philip Hedl.
Yeah, so clearly it's not ideal. So I'm going to quote from the column itself, and to me, there's one specific term in here that's the most concerning part. It says Philip Hedl is returning to his home in Czechia for an indeterminate period in the next step of his recovery from the suspected concussion he sustained on November 2nd. The Post has learned. Industry sources have framed the decision reached in conjunction by the 24-year-old center and the Rangers organization as a reset, in which Hedl will continue to skate on his own under the supervision of the trainer and skills coach with whom he works in the offseason. Sources have told the Post that Hedl, who is believed to have sustained 4 concussions during his 6-year NHL career, in which he's been sidelined for injury 10 different times, has made progress while skating on his own at the club practice rink over the last 4 weeks and is committed to returning this year. The decision, reached mutually by Hedl's camp and team hierarchy, will allow number 72 to experience the next phase in his recovery at home in a familiar environment where he was surrounded by friends and family. And then it goes on. But the last piece is, if Hedl is unable to return during the regular season, the Rangers would gain approximately $3.8 million of additional space off the center's $4.437 million to bulk up for the roster. Using that money would not preclude Hedl returning for the playoffs. And to me, honestly, the term that concerns me the most was 2 things. One, indeterminate period of time is the one where we have absolutely no clue when he's going to be back. And look, concussions, especially repeated ones, they're cumulative. You don't know what's going to happen, right? And then B, the fact that they've admitted now that A, it is a concussion, which we all knew. B, this is his 4th in a 6-year career, and he's had other injuries 10 times over that career. First and foremost, the concern is for the player itself from a health perspective, right? If he comes back for the playoffs, it'll be like a Nikita Kucherov situation where there's no implications on the cap if he can come back. But the fact that they're returning him to go home to do that reset lends you to believe that you're looking probably at least 2 months down the road potentially, and it could be potentially for the playoffs. And then it's also feasible he may not be back at all, which would be very concerning. And Russ, you remember Michael Sauer and what happened to him by the Dion Phaneuf shoulder pads that he was wearing when he hit him in the chin and he never recovered.
I was covering the team then daily, and we didn't hear about Sauer for 2 years.
And the last thing you want from a guy who is having chronic concussion issues is to come back after sitting out for 4 months or 5 months and come back right at the beginning of the playoffs where everybody is looking to clean your clock. That's not an optimum situation.
He's had a lot of bad injuries. I don't think he'll be back this year. I will also say somebody else did this not that long ago where there was somebody who was having like post-concussion and they went back to their home country. I can't remember who it was. Yeah. And I don't know if I think that player may have taken a whole year off or something. Can't remember, but it sounds very reminiscent, like it's been done this way before, and that's why I don't expect him back. Gaining the cap space is nice to say, but again, getting a center that could replace him is hard to do.
Yeah, I mean, right now you've got Zibanejad and Trocheck 1-2, so maybe that's
Nick Menino is your number 3 right now. Honestly,
that's
who's your number 3.
And I think better than that, and he's been okay. But
Nick Menino is an okay number 4, but the suggestion of a Tyler Johnson as a 3, that's not bad. If Chicago retains 50% on that, I think he's making $5 million and it's an expiring contract. Okay, fine, but
you know where Randy's going to go? He's going to go. Oh,
he did already.
Monahan.
No, he did Lindholm. He didn't do Monahan. He did Lindholm.
I know, but he should do Monahan because that's more.
No, and we've talked about Monahan, right? First of all, the cap hit is much more manageable, right? It's prorated 1.9 million, right? And even if it gets picked up a little bit, right, it's even better. Look, I would love Lindholm as a number 3, right? I mean, I'll wholeheartedly admit it, right? If you can get Calgary to eat some, or even if not, they're going to have to basically create.
I don't want to give up those kinds of assets. If you get Monahan, you can get Monahan, give up fewer assets or less, good assets for a lot of term, and still get a defenseman too.
I think if you traded for Lindholm, that it would probably end up being a deal involving a first-round pick and probably somebody like Othman.
Yeah, and I don't think they're in a position to do that.
Mike, no way.
I know.
No how.
I know.
Not happening. If the Rangers did
that's
that,
what they're going to ask for.
But that's what they'd ask for.
Yeah. Good. Oh, they can ask for whatever they want. I'm just
That's
telling
like-
you, there's no way I'm doing a first in general, and there's
Right.
certainly no way I'm doing a first in Offman, and there's certainly no way I'm doing Offman to get a rental in Lindholm.
Well, Jan, I mean, what I'm saying is, and this is leading into this article that that CJ and Pierre LeBrun wrote for The Athletic that I wanted to talk about before we end the show, is that the prices right now for the big names are ridiculous. Now they may lower as it gets closer to the deadline, but we know this. We've been covering this sport for a number of years. Probably it isn't going to lower, and it's just going to be whoever is going to meet that price. And Lindholm is probably the best center available in this, rental free agent class. Now, Pierre LeBrun and Chris Johnson.
One other thing before them, remember, Barclay Goodrow is getting paid like a 3 seed.
Right,
you're not going to dare use him that way.
But they're playing him on the wing, correct?
I know, but he could play center.
Right, but
he could be the short-term fix.
But there's a reason why he's not playing center.
I know, but he could be the short-term fix. I also think if they went and got Lindholm, and Lindholm, let's say, wanted to, stay there, then they might be able to get Sikora and like a conditional first, and maybe even another pick. That's something where I think they would be interested in doing that if Lindholm didn't ask for the moon, because the cap is going up. But I have a feeling that Lindholm would price himself out.
Now, Lindholm is one of the players that CJ and Pierre LeBrun mentioned in their column. LeBrun speculates that the Bruins, and this is basically, they're playing matchmaker here. Who do you think this player will go to? And Pierre guessed the Bruins, which I said makes perfect sense, because if you look right now, Morgan Geekie is playing playing up the middle, either second or third line. Charlie Coyle is a good third line center. They've moved him up. He's been scoring, but I think they're looking for center depth. And Zacha, if they get themselves a number one, Zacha probably moves back to the wing. But if they get themselves a number two, Zacha maybe stays with Pasternak. But the question is do the Bruins have enough assets to get Lindholm, Lindholm? And I don't know whether they do. It'd be, somebody like Fabian Lysell or John Beecher or something of that nature.
Yeah, it would be Beecher and or Lysell or both of them and a pick. And I don't know. I mean, if they do that, like I said, there's not much left in Boston. Now, does that bring them a cup? I guess it gets them closer to a cup. And based on where they're playing now, I guess they're a top 5 team for the cup. I mean, we have to at least put them in that conversation, especially if they do this move. So, Boston's been rolling the dice for years since the draft. We're not going to mention the year and stuff. And at some point they're going to pay the piper, but they haven't paid it yet.
Eventually, everything, it's going to evaporate. I mean, Marchand will get too old and everything. But I mean, I don't think they're going to give up Poitras, because they've already played him like 40 games in the NA, or almost 40 games.
He looks good in the World Juniors, so when he comes back, they're going to probably put him right back in there.
Right, exactly. Now, Chris mentioned the Avalanche, and the Avalanche makes a lot of sense because I know, Ross, you don't think Ryan Johansson is a good 2C.
I don't.
And Ross, they brought in Ross Colton, and he's been okay, but he can't.
Okay. I mean, but
he can't move up.
He's a third liner,
right? But the thing is, okay, what do they have to give up? I mean, they're not going to give up Bowen Byram in a deal, So I mean, their prospect pool is not exactly deep. So I don't know whether Colorado can make that work. Now, here's where, here's where the cost is going to get ridiculous for certain teams. Now, Chris Tanev is a name we've mentioned on the show a bunch of times. Pierre LeBrun speculates that the Devils might be a team that would be interested in Tanev. He also mentioned
who's leaving the lineup so Tanev can play.
Well, I mean, that's assuming that Dougie Hamilton's not coming back.
Let's just say Hamilton's not back. I mean, you're taking Ball out now. You're one big rugged defenseman. You're taking him out. Like, who are you taking out? Taking out Luke Hughes. Like, who's he replacing?
Well, I mean, he's a right shot defenseman, Russ. So
Well, I
he
mean,
would replace
Ball
him.
hasn't been Russ Ball hasn't been particularly good this year.
No, but I mean, you need a certain mix of defensemen.
Right.
Tanev is certainly a little better. I'm not saying you can't do that, but I'm just saying it just seems weird that might be what you do. And I'm not sure that's going to fix it.
Well, he's also pairing that with the potential of them trading Markstrom to the Devils, which would be, Markstrom's not a rental. He's got another couple of years left in his contract. I'm not sure how they would make that work money-wise. Now they could do it in the short term because Hamilton's cap hit is $9 million. And the combination of Tanev and Markstrom, I think, is a little over 10. So you could maybe move things around, and I'm sure there'd be bodies going back to Calgary in this deal that are on the NHL roster. But I'm not sure how feasible that is. But I think it's within the realm of possibility. But
Here's the funny thing, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Because of the last couple of years, now everybody is getting traded to the Devils, right? Because they have cap space, and because the last couple of years they've done things.
Right.
I think this year they're looking for a goalie, and that's about it. I really don't think they're looking for much else. I don't think they should really mess with their lineup that much either, because I think the more they go down that road, the more they have a chance of really kind of screwing things up rather than getting them to gel. And so I feel like they're just going for that goalie, and that's it.
And Randy is saying that Elliot Friedman mentioned Markstrom to the Devils as well.
Sure, that's a possibility.
Go ahead, Jan.
I mean, again, Markstrom, as you said, is long term. Either Hannafin or Tanev is a short term rental, right? So if you utilize Hamilton's salary on long term IR, it's not perfect, but you only have a small stub amount that remains. That's a variant between the two, because Markstrom looking up is at 6, Tanev's at 4.5, Noah Hannafin's at 4.9 right now. And you look at Hamilton, I think what Hamilton's about almost 9 million or something on LTIR. He's 9 million, right? So you're looking at somewhere between 1.5 and 1.9 million that you got to assume, which I think the Devils might have the cap room to do so. And they need help on their blue line right now. It's a very young blue line. They do need some experience, especially in the players. Look, Nemec and Hughes are the future, and they're going to play. I don't think Siegenthaler's had a particularly good year. I don't think Ball's had a particularly good year. And they do need a fairly strong veteran presence on that blue line, especially down the stretch.
Siegenthaler is valuable. I mean, Ball would be the guy that would come out. But again,
Siegenthaler played very well with Hamilton. That was a pairing that worked well. Now, the other team that Chris mentioned with Tanev is the Leafs. And I don't know how that would get done because, like I said, Tanev's making over 4. The Leafs don't have the cap space. The Leafs don't have the players on the roster to trade to Calgary in terms of salary that would balance it out unless somebody went on LTIR.
There's a third team in there, Mike.
Right. Well, but Russ, they also don't have the assets. They could trade. But let me finish. They don't have a second-round pick for the next 3 drafts. They don't have a first-round pick in 2025. So for a guy who may be coming there in the summer for nothing in a year where I don't think you have the goaltending and the depth on defense.
But here's something that could happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you look at this and you say, okay, the Leafs trade Nick Robertson to Arizona, they get a second. Then they offer that second, and it's an Arizona second, so it's not bad. And somebody from the Marlies that has a little bit of game, not
Alex Steves.
Right, Steves. And there's your deal, and that might work. That's a possibility.
But the problem is they wouldn't be able to fit the $4 million.
Oh, that's Arizona will take money too. I mean, that's the other.
Now the interesting one, and we'll end on this one. The interesting one here is Jake Gensel. Now I don't know whether Pittsburgh is going to trade Jake Gensel. He's a rental.
He's Crosby's guy. I don't think so.
Well, this is the thing, Russ. If he's Crosby's guy and you're out of the playoff race and you're convinced you can bring him back, why wouldn't you trade him and get assets and then re-sign him in the summer?
How often does that really happen, though?
Right. Mike, I think the big part is, are you concerned with the message you're sending him by sending him away? And B, are you also concerned depending on the place where you send him, does he really fall in love with that place and decide, you know what, the grass is greener on the other side, I'm going to go, right? But as you said, part of it is are you willing to take the risk of annoying his BFF, who is the center of your team, by trading Gensel? On paper, it may make sense if they do fall out of it.
Well,
problem is the optics and the impact associated with it from a personalities within the room perspective.
I would give Kyle Dubas enough credit to say that he would talk to Crosby and he would talk to Gensel before making that move and consult with them and say, okay, if you're not open to this, that's fine. We won't do that. And we want to sign you. But, how about this? And Pierre, he speculated the Rangers. Now if Heedle's contract is on the, now I think if the Rangers make a trade, it's for a center. I don't think
Gensel doesn't make sense for them.
Presuming Wheeler continues to play well on the first line right side. If he doesn't, you may revisit that in terms of deciding you need a top 6 right winger, especially not knowing when Taco's coming back.
I think Rust, now that he's healthy and he's coming back, if he does well, they would trade him before they trade Gensel. That's just my feeling.
Yeah. So, and the other one, and they didn't mention this player, but I'll mention it because Russ loves him so much, and that's Patrick Kane. The way Patrick Kane is.
Hold on. I want to set the record straight right now. I said that Patrick Kane doesn't make you a winner because there's a lot of things that you have to do to get him going. I did say he needed a little more time to see what he's going to do. Now tell me, Mike, are the Red Wings winning more with Patrick Kane? Yes or no?
No, but is Patrick Kane the reason why they're losing?
Well,
no.
He is a partial.
No. They're losing because their goaltending sucks.
But he's a part of it. He is a part of it.
He scored in four.
Correlation or causation, Mike? It's kind of hard. Look, I'm not saying he's the main cause.
No,
but
I'm
I
not
would
saying
say
the main
his
cause,
defensive deficiencies of times doesn't help the situation, and not that he's the main driver. I mean, look, he's eons above where he was last year, Mike. I mean, there's no question about that. Yeah. But he's definitely not a strong defensive player. Let's put it that way.
No,
he's a point per game player, and he's got 6 goals in 11 games. I'm not
talking
saying
about strong defensive players. Alexander Ovechkin now is resembling Mario Lemieux before he came back from injury, like literally just playing at center ice. And if the puck goes the other way, if it's in the defensive zone, he kind of takes 2 steps. He'll make a jab at the puck. He doesn't hit anybody as much anymore. And he just wants the puck to go the other way. Like, that's literally where Ovechkin's at right now. It's scary, actually.
And offensively, he's looked brutal. I mean, he looks he looks like he's aged 10 years over the summer.
He does.
Based upon the way his season has gone so far. I mean, I watched him the other night against the Rangers. I mean, he looked a shell of the guy I'm used to seeing when he faces that team.
And I watched every one of his shifts. And like I said, did you see him getting involved in the defense at all? No.
Yeah, well, I mean,
that team's winning.
Yeah, but I think eventually,
and they got Ethan Bear.
Okay. We'll just mention that to end here because, so Bear signs a 2-year deal with the Capitals. It was backloaded, so he gets paid more in year 2. It walks him to unrestricted free agency, which I think is good for him. It's not a big money deal. It's a little over $2 million, but he's a right-hand shot defenseman. And I think he helps because remember that defense over the last couple of years has lost. I won't go back to Brooks Orpik, but I mean they did lose who they traded to Boston, who's now in Carolina, Dmitry Orlov. And they've lost a couple, and then they've lost a couple other defensemen. So this helps, along with bringing in Sandin. This helps bolster.
Break in here for a minute. Owen Beck just took a header into the boards. They're down 2-0, but that could be a 5-minute penalty with 3-something to go in the game.
Okay,
so Canada, even though it's not what they want because it's one of their better players.
Yeah,
they may get a break.
6 on 4 then probably. Think they pull the goalie and go 6 on 4.
They'll pull the goalie. But so
sorry.
So now I didn't see the Wilson hit on Trouba. Is this something that is going to get this supplementary?
Because it's Wilson, it's a story. Because it's Wilson and Trouba, it's a story. Because
Right.
it's Wilson against the Rangers, it's a story.
It's a story.
Again,
That's it.
it was basically two players. Trouba, he came in on a partial breakaway, and he basically had the shot. It got blocked. He was going for the rebound, and basically the two of them intersected. And when they intersected, the point of contact was Trouba hit Wilson's shoulder, or some people thought elbowed shoulder, hitting Trouba in the chin, and then he was sidelined the rest of the game, right? And so it didn't look like he raised his arm. It didn't look like he was attempting to hit him in the head. The interesting part, first of all, obviously, because those three things I mentioned, it became a story. And then B, yesterday, the interesting part, as I wrote in my blog today, is in the comments, and I'll read to you the comments that he said, which I thought was the interesting part when he talked about the play itself, was, sorry, let me find the exact quote because I want to quote it exactly. He said was in the locker room, he said, all good. He said, before the Rangers boarded plane to Florida, the team will play the Panthers, blah, blah, blah. Just played it safe. And then parenthesis added by the writer, possible concussion, end parenthesis, not something to mess with. Make sure you feel good in the morning and feel good starting, right? And that was the exact quote. What I thought was interesting is if you look at the post-game comments that the Rangers put out on YouTube, which they do all the time, that whole piece of the comment was nowhere to be found. So because he talked about concussion, it's, oh my God, we can't post it, but everybody reported. Brooks reported it.
No, of course, but what
reported it. Everybody reported. So everybody knew he was in the concussion.
If he mentions concussion, they'll say, why isn't he in protocol? That's why.
And he was. No, he did. They did have him in the protocol. They did get examined. He missed the last two periods of the game. He sat out because of it. And then the next, he was on the ice yesterday.
They would rather not be in the morning quotes. That's what they. So if you weren't there,
the odd part is it's out there, right? So not putting in the video doesn't preclude the fact that you can find the quote all over the place.
There's stuff that has been out there in the NHL where we've seen teams just leave out bits of an interview because they're like, no, when they show it on YouTube, and all of a sudden it doesn't have.
Oh, please.
That's a normal occurrence.
A good PR department, when a player says something that they're not supposed to, that immediately gets cut off. Like, luckily, the reporter has the audio on their phone. And if you don't, then you're not doing your job, because if you're depending on them.
That video that goes up on YouTube or the team website, it's washed of that.
If it's on Twitter, then it's out there for everybody.
It's not all teams.
It's out there. It got tweeted yesterday. It was in today's paper, so it's all over the place. I just find it very interesting how we're gonna whitewash it, though. You're gonna find it everywhere else. We'll just whitewash it so you can't listen to it on the video.
Wait, you said the paper. Do you still get a paper delivered to your house?
I still get a paper.
Oh my God,
I do.
Yeah. Wow. Now I'll just mention.
Some of us still have a 45-minute train ride 3 days a week into the city, and some of us also on the Sabbath can't read the paper online, so I like having it delivered.
Okay.
Now, I just mentioned the Leafs here before we end the show here, because the Leafs are playing in Columbus, which should be a victory because Columbus is hideous. But the way the Leafs have played this year, losing to Chicago, losing to Buffalo, losing to Columbus, getting a point out of Columbus when they were losing 5-0. They lost to Chicago twice, and they've lost to Ottawa twice. It would be typical of the Leafs to lose to one of the worst teams in the league. That being the case, on top of everything, Ilya Samsonov is starting his first game since he played in Buffalo last week and gave up 5 goals and was yanked. I said in my column today, Russ, Samsonov is running out of opportunities here.
Yeah, no doubt.
Now, it's going to be about a month, maybe even a little longer, before Joseph Woll is able to come back from a high ankle sprain. So right now, their options are Martin Jones, who's played well enough, but he let in a bad goal that cost them the game against Ottawa. I don't think the loss was his fault, but they need Samsonov to at least be average. If he's average, if they can just get okay goaltending out of him until Woll gets back, then they can ride this out. If he's giving up, and he's given up 4 or more goals in 7 of his 14 starts, he's been horrific. If he does that again, then Brad Treliving is going to have to do something. Meaning,
they're in a tough spot, because if they end up having to get a goalie instead of a Tanev, because that's the only move they can make, because that's all they could swing, it's going to be bad.
Yeah, I really don't think that.
If you improve the defense, Mike, if you improve the defense, that takes the pressure to a certain extent off whoever's. between the pipes, which has been part of the problem also.
Yeah, in theory, Jan, yes, but the problem is that right now Samsonov has a broken psyche, and I'm not trying to be, I'm not joking here. He gives up one bad goal, and then you see him just completely crumble. And then it's like 2 or 3, and then they yank him. And like in Buffalo, when they pulled him after 5 goals, he went down the tunnel for like 10 minutes before coming back with the baseball cap and sitting at the end of the bench. Right now, like he just doesn't know how to play. They basically gave him 3 or 4 days away from the rink, say, like basically reset. Like, okay, fine. But if he lets in a bad goal against Columbus, it's going to be the same thing all over again. So they need him to straighten himself out. And if he doesn't, I don't think they have an option internally. They have a kid who's 22 years old who's played 15 games in the American Hockey League. He's not ready to come up and play. So they're going to have to probably either, trade for somebody.
Send him to the Marlies. Hope someone takes him.
Well, no, they'll send him to the Marlies. It'll clear a little over $1 million on the cap. And then they can maybe trade for somebody who's making league minimum that, like a trade for a Spencer Martin or something like that, who can get them through the next month. I know. I mean, I'm not saying it's a great scenario.
Yeah, I mean, Martin, he would plug a hole, but again, you're now putting everything on Wall for this year, and he's not even back yet, right? I mean,
no, and right, exactly, and they can't rush him back. You need him to be completely healthy, because if he goes down again, your playoff chances are done.
Hey, here's a fun part. When Carolina placed Antti Ranta on waivers, Toronto could have claimed him.
Yeah, but he's making $1 million.
Prorated amount, but he could have been claimed.
They couldn't have fit him.
Right,
he's making $1.5 million. Yeah. Right,
so
but
that's the problem.
But if you demote Samsonov, you open like $1.12 million on the cap by demoting him, and then you could
is he eligible to go down without passing through waivers?
Oh no, he has to clear a waiver. Nobody's going to claim him at $3.5 million when he's playing. Yeah, no.
You would think not. I agree with you. Right,
yeah,
but again, you could have done that by claiming Ranta and then trying to pass Samsonov through and gotten the cap space savings that way, right? You had an option for goaltending right there if you needed it.
At that point, Jan, it was like 10 days ago. They were still hoping. This was before he gave up 6 goals against Columbus and 5 goals against Buffalo. So it was bad, but it wasn't as bad.
Brad Treliving's a protected guy in his first year in Toronto. Even though he's had some foibles here, nobody likes to talk about him, and nobody will really admit to it. So we'll have to wait till the season's over. And then when we do the postmortem on Toronto, then revisit what Brad Treliving did or didn't do.
Russ, every GM in this league, based on what Samsonov did last year, would have signed him to the 1 year. They went to arbitration and they got him for 1 year. Every GM would do that. Every single one.
But he could have made a change. Like, he didn't have to go with Samsonov.
No, but what options were out there? What options?
I mean, how do you know if they would have called for Ranta, if Ranta could have been traded to him? Like, we don't know.
Was based on what they did last year, would Antti Ranta have been an upgrade over?
Well, he might have been, yeah, because Ranta.
Come on, that's hindsight.
No, it's not hindsight. If you look at their records, Ranta's probably better than Samsonov. Samsonov just had a few moments, but
Samsonov had a .918 save percentage and got them through the first round of the playoffs before he got hurt. He had a good year last year.
Right, now, sounds a lot like Jack Campbell. So now you're just protecting the other guy.
But ironically, Russ, they didn't face the same dilemma that they did with Campbell, because Campbell was a UFA and they decided not to sign him to the long-term deal. With Samsonov, he was a restricted free agent with arb rights. They got him for 1 year. This was the prove it year. And part of the reason why maybe he's crumbling is because he knows his leverage in terms, he's done in Toronto. They're not going to re-sign him. Not a chance in hell.
Here's what I would say, though. Like, with this situation, Wall's a little older, but they're almost banking on Wall and Treliving doing this with the way he signed Samsonov, the same way that Buffalo is doing it with Devin Levi. It's not that much different. It's not.
It's a little bit different because at least Wall has got about, I think, 80 games of AHL.
Right, but that's the only, but it's not a huge difference between it.
And he's older, and he played really well in the AHL last year. He was an AHL All-Star, and he played in the playoffs, and he played in the regular season last year. So, I think there's more of a resume in terms of Wall. Now, I think Levi's ceiling is much higher. I think he's he could be a
Oh,
great.
yeah. I mean, I would say his ceiling's higher, sure.
Yeah, I think
it's odd. I would have thought the Leafs would have had a little bit more in place, based on the fact that I would think that Treliving in his first year would really want to break through the barrier that at least getting. They won't get to the conference finals now, but at least going 2 rounds.
Russ, this
giving
team,
a better effort in the second round.
The team that he took over was flawed. Had they had traded a boatload of draft picks and prospects to get Ryan O'Reilly, to get Achari, to get Shen, to win a round. I mean, they wanted to win more than a round, but that's what it ended up being.
All right, but they won a round. But the point is, this year, even preseason wise, when everything was rosy, did you think that they were going to get out of the second round?
No. I thought they could get to the second round, but with Boston, with New York, with the teams in the East, with their defense the way it was. Now, this is, I assume their goaltending would be the same as it was last year, but it's now been worse because of injury and because Samsonov has taken a step back. Their defense is not as good as it was. Their forwards defensively are not as good. You lose O'Reilly and you lose Achari.
I mean, forget the goaltending for a minute.
Right.
Some of these other things could have been like, you got to have a plan B sometimes. You could have looked at some of these things and said, okay, if this doesn't work, what are we going to do?
Right. I mean,
they had a good plan B in place.
They tried to sign O'Reilly. He decided to go to Nashville. They went with Tyler Bertuzzi. I think he's underwhelmed right now. I still think he can be a good winger on one of the top 2 lines, but he hasn't produced the way they thought he was going to. I think Max Domi has played okay. The Reeves signing was a disaster, and Klingberg. It's like Klingberg never even signed because basically they didn't give up anything for him. And
no, I'm not saying that. He's doing no worse than I expected him to do. I expected nothing out of that Klingberg signing anyhow.
Well,
to be honest,
he got hurt, so that
I know, but I'm just.
I know.
But last year,
at least he was healthy. Wow. At least he was there. I mean, he's if he was there,
showing up is all it took.
No, I mean, I'm not saying he was terrible last year with Anaheim and Minnesota. He didn't live up to expectations, but at least he was there. At least I mean, they would take him being a body right now. He might be done for his career. He's having hip surgery and he might be done at 30 years old. So anyway, All right. We will be back. We will be back next year with another edition of the Hockey Buzzcast. For the departed Jan Levine, for Russ Cohen, I'm Michael Agello. Thanks for watching. Have an enjoyable new year. Be safe. Don't drink and drive, all that stuff. I'm not going to. So,
I mean, if you want to watch my Locked On Flyers show, we're going to be doing a taping on New Year's Eve. It'll come up that next morning. I don't think we're putting it on live that night, but we're going to have a few New Year's hijinks if you want.
There you go. They're going to be popping corks. And remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.